Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the second day of the third edition of Hong Kong Art Gallery Association's annual art symposium at Asia Society. My name is Yas Mostashari Chang. I'm the Treasurer and Director for Community Engagement for Hong Kong Gallery Associations and the Director of Gallery Wheat in Hong Kong. The topic of the first session this morning is female artists in Asia, in honor of Asia Society's Yuliang exhibition. The global average of represented female artists is about 30%. Hong Kong's art ecology today looks significantly ahead of the rest of the world in terms of influential women. I believe this will continue to cascade down and increase the focus on female artists. Looking at the quality and number of successful women leading both non-profit and for-profit organizations, 60% of Hong Kong Art Gallery Association member founders and directors are women. On the non-profit side, the directors of M+ and Hong Kong Museum of Art, the Hong Kong Art Center, as well as Asia Art Archive are female. And in terms of art fair and auction houses in Hong Kong, Art Basel, Art Central, and Affordable Art Fair, as well as Christie's and Phillips, are all led by women. Joining us for the first session this morning, I'm proud to present Freya Chou, who is a curator at Parasite, where she organizes and oversees education and public programs since 2015. Her recent curatorial projects include Ellen Pao, What About Home Affairs?, a retrospective, which will open next month at Parasite. Ellen Pao, one of Hong Kong's most influential and pioneering artists, a curator, as well as the co-founder of Videotage, a leading Hong Kong-based nonprofit organization specializing in new media art. Doris Wong Wei In, a Hong Kong artist whose work is about autobiographical experience, episodic memory, and playful intervention with art history. Özge Ersoy, the public programs lead at Asia Art Archive, who is also the managing editor of Mest.org, an online publication conceived as an artist-centered initiative. And finally, the moderator, Enid Sui, the senior culture writer for South China Morning Post. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Freya. Thanks Hong Kong Art Gallery Association for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here, and as with colleagues that I respect a lot. I very much look forward to the conversation later. So in the beginning, when Fabio invites me to talk about the history of female artist representations in the region, I think that kind of changed the general topic a little bit, but it's also very broad. I was very honored, but honestly a bit hesitated if I'm the right person to speak about it. I'm not an art historian, and it's also difficult to give a general historical perspectives in the region, because every city has its own path. So what I would like to do today is to begin with a story, and I will focus on one artist, which is Ellen Pao. Sorry, Doris, but I'm working with Ellen, so it's an obvious choice. In 2010, I was working at the Taipei Biennial as associate curators. With the current edition just opened yesterday. But the 2010 one that we did is a much smaller scale of biennial. We want it that way. We only have 24 artists because we want this core group of artists to receive the same attention, and they are all commission works. So in one of the curatorial meetings, we have to decide the last artist to be included in the vinyl. It was between a male artist and a female artist. There was a lot of discussion, but in the end, the lead curators decided that we want to have a more gender balanced ratio, so we went for the female artist. I was not 100% agree with the decision back then, because I thought the female artist's work would fit more with the curatorial concept. And I feel that the politics went beyond the work itself. I was also more naive and ignorant 10 years ago. So we chose the female artist, and turned out it was fantastic selection. So I wasn't fully registered the importances of the act that we did back then, but it is embedded in my consciousness that this is something very important that we need to take into consideration. And it stays with me until today. So fast forward in 2018, a couple months ago, I met a male curator who said that he wants to work with me because he found it difficult for him to navigate through female perspectives. And he wants to learn that by working with a female curator, which means that he feels that he doesn't understand women. I was genuinely puzzled and confused with the intention and also the invitation. Because for me, it doesn't bother me to work with a male artist because I'm not a man. And I couldn't help wondering that, is this the reason why, after almost a decade, that we are still struggling with the gender imbalance of a female's representation in the art world? And is it because most of the decision makers, let's assume men mainly, since we live in such a male-dominated society, are lack of this female perspective? But what exactly is females' perspectives? Do we want to generalize my perspectives with Alan's, Ozge's, Enid's, and Doris's? No, because that would be crazy. And what is in this perspective different from a queer's perspectives, an indigenous artist's perspective, a Black artist's perspectives? So, and it doesn't never occur to me that I have such a unique perspectives that people want to learn from me until someone reminds me of it. So I'm not just a curator, I'm a female curator. And which is the same to many of the female artists, that when they are being mentioned, it has to specifically be credited as a female curator, a female artist, sorry. It feels like this is something not very normal. It's a very special thing to be a female artist. But this is not the case for most of the male artists, that you would not see like any show credit as a retrospective of a male artist. You would just simply put a retrospective of an artist. So what's the deal with all these categorizations and the labels? Well, it's pretty obvious that it's counter from the power centers perspectives. We, those to be labeled, are the minorities. And this unique minorities perspectives is actually ironically cultivated by being labeled, unrecognized, rejected, repressed, alienated, and unheard. But luckily, the world is changing now. So there are more and more people started talking about this. But to acknowledge it is not enough, because there are still some fundamental biases that hasn't been fixed. For example, I got this invitation because I'm a female curator for the male artist's invitation. So I thought about a sentence from the Brazilian writer, Clarice Lispector. This is the original sentence, is I can't sum myself up because it's impossible to add up a chair and 2 apples. I'm a chair and 2 apples, and I don't add up. So this is from the novel of Clarice's Agua Viva. I'm very much influenced by Clarice Lispector's work. So in this novel, Lispector pursues a narrative quest of self-discovery, only to realize that her identity is compound, and words cannot always convey what she actually feels. So if here, the apple symbolized knowledge, and the chair is an aspect of domesticity, the voice is affirming that she is greater than her gender. She's individual, and she refused to fall into categorizations or being labeled. And this reminds me of Alan Powell. So, as mentioned, I have been working with Alan since earlier this year for the mini retrospectives, which will open at Parasite next month. Alan is considered one of the most important and influential artists in Hong Kong. but her works are merely exhibited or represented in the past 20 years. Why is that? I still don't have an answer, but I think it's simply because her works are beyond her time. So allow me to indulge myself a bit today that I would like to use some of Alan's works as an example to demystify this so-called females' perspectives. So this first work, Big Lai Zhi, English title Pledge. This is a series of video installation that Alan has been developing for 10 years-ish. The English title Pledge, which is from the household furniture polished product. Many of the family household might have one at home. So it means like a solid promise. And Alan used this works, the title of this works, to referring the Chinese government's promise that Hong Kong's way of life will remain unchanged for 50 years after the handover. In the Chinese character, this word, Chou, which means pearl, jade, and beauty, which is also a popular girl's name that means femininity. So this title implies that this work is the languages of the body on the post-colonial detour. It explores the female image, language, and the communication. So there's no documentation, video documentation of this work. So I will walk you through what this work is about. So in the video, you will see a female figure banging her head against the dressing room table. So this piece was the first exhibit at the French clubs in Hong Kong's dressing room. So there was a site-specific design for the dressing room setup. So the female is couched beneath the table. Her head looks down, obscuring the visibility of her face. The sound of her head bang against the table, like this, it's processed and amplified. So the audience needs to approach the installation by climbing up. We have a sketch here. By climbing up the stairs, then they can hear this monotonous and metallic sound of the woman banging her head. The second image here, I can only tell it to a stranger, was the third installment of this Big Lai Zhi series, the pledged and installation. The video image of the artist was sitting with her back to the viewer, where you can see, oh, sorry. This one. Sitting with her back to the viewer and banging her head at the regular intervals. It's projected onto two screens. These are the two screens. The first projected image is located at the far end, where you can see another simulation, far end of the room. It's a small room with a dusty mirror surface placed on the floor in the structures that reassembles the Chinese Earth God's temple, which is this one, and it's located here. The second image is projected onto a piece of latex, which was peeled from the artist's back, bearing her skin and her hair and suspended in the middle of the space by red threads and stretched to the room's corners. You can see from here. So there is, again, this repetitive sound of the artist's head, which interrupts the noise of a busy highway under the construction. The frequency of the sound, which at most 4 beats per minute, which corresponds neither to the pulse or the heartbeat, but it had the same reason with the first Big Lai Zhi instrument. So this becomes an integral part of the ambient soundtrack that refers to a different but equally constant rhythm, which is the urban rhythm for this case. So this piece was the first exhibited in 1996 in Denmark in the container show. So both of the works that I'm showing you with the image are raising questions about the ways in which social norms and expected stereotypes of gender roles are encrypted onto and confined the female body. So by the way, we at Parasite, we're gonna reproduce these 2 video installations. And so you can see, come to see the show and you can see what was first exhibited at the original place. And then I want to show you a video. It's called The Song of the Goddess, which was produced in 1992. Can you play the video? Thank you. Okay, maybe we can stop right here. I don't want to show you the whole clip so you can come to see our show. So the work is Allen's strong statement on feminine masquerade and lesbian spectatorship. It pays homage to the 2 famous Cantonese opera singers, which you see in the beginning of the clips. That's Yam Kim Fat and Park Soo Sin in the 1950s. Park was usually in the female role, while Yam in drag, either playing the male lead or the role of a woman, masquerading as a man. It is said that during their 40 years relationship on and off the screen, they were never apart more than 4 days. And that it was only when Yam died in 1989 that Park personally arranged her funeral that openly proclaimed her love for her. So clearly, dressing in drag on stage and on screen was more acceptable by mainstream audiences. Hong Kong's attitude towards the same-sex relationship was largely conservative back then. So the backdrop of the production year of Song of the Goddess in 1991 has largely to do with the local lobbies to change this very repressive law against the homosexuality. It was until the same year in 1991 that homosexuality was finally decriminalized in Hong Kong. So in many of Allen's works, it concerned with the gender politics, as you can see, but she never overly politicizing it. She doesn't fall into the categorization because she refuses to be labeled. What she concerns is more than that. She often keeps the viewer intrigued as to how real such constructs through technology can be trusted. The process of re-editing, relaying, and reinstalling the sounds, image, and objects in the Bit Like Zhu, the Pledge series becomes a very important practice that Allen extends to other works as a means to establish this continuous critical dialogue between different works and the viewing subjects. While Son of the Goddess, the video we just said, was an indication of Allen's continuing interest in the intersections of a stage performance and electronic art. Then I would like to give you another example of this, another piece train too. So give you a little background. So this video documented one of Zuni, this performance artist group's performance activities in the late 1980s, situated in a milestone era when Alan started experimenting with screen-based media and in combination with the stage, dance, and the installation. So later in the videos, you will see there's features of electronic wipe in parallel with the black stage curtain where human figures on the backstage reappear between the wipe and the edge of an electronic frame. This repeated frames accompanied by an electronic guitar and percussion arrangement keeps multiplying the images of a female performer who is constantly falling down and finally disappear in between the frames. We can play the videos. Is it playing? Okay, we can start it again. It's okay. So all the works will be shown at Parasite on December 8th. That's our opening day. And it will run through February 17th next year. Okay, maybe we can stop here. Again, come to Parasite to finish the film. So Drain 2 not only provokes the unresolved tensions with the audio components, but also comments on the materializations of the electronic medium, as well as the sensory experience that urban rhythms encompassed in relation to the city life that is lived and understood by its inhabitants. So Ellen started working in the late 1980s, and throughout her 30 years of practice, she has continually explored the possibility of creating alternative viewing experience through the lens. And that is concerned with the value inherited to technology and its modes of communication with the city and the daily life, and how the images of a woman and woman's body extends to the exploitation of Hong Kong's urban rhythms to incorporate issues of gender representation. So throughout the time of preparing the show and working with Ellen's, my advantages of being a woman doesn't really help me understand much of Ellen's practice easier. I'm straight and I don't have like deep knowledge about media, art, and the technology, so I have to learn from the scratch. I dig into Ellen's way of thinking, what her influences are, and how she constantly re-educating herself. This incredible dimension and layers of her works comes from the formation of who she is. Her sexual orientation was rejected by the society that it was considered a crime until 1991. So this is the journey I would never understand. For me, Ellen is more than a female artist with a female perspective. She is a feminist, Ellen is more than a female artist with a female perspective. She is a feminist artist with a universal perspective. Because for me, being a feminist is not just a label or a slogan. It means you have to go through a long process of re-educating and reinventing yourself to challenge whatever the labels the society puts on us. So to sum up, I would like to tell the male curator that you will never learn what a female's perspective is just by working or observing with how a female curator works. You have to go through that process. Women will do that all the time because the society doesn't allow our voices to be heard easily. You have to constantly questioning, criticizing yourself, have doubts about the weight of your thinking, and reinvent yourself. And the most importantly, to smash the patriarchy. We all have the obligation to keep asking questions about the experience that is not our own, experiences that are worse than our own will ever be. So even if after 10 years, we still have to make political decisions in order to have a more equal gender balancing in our world, we just have to keep on doing it. Because until someday that we can all have a universal perspective and everyone in this minority categorization can say we don't add up. And hopefully someday when we have a female panel discussions on female artists, we can have a man sitting here and to speak about his female perspectives properly. Thank you.